In 1848, James Russell Lowell, poet, abolitionist, and son of a Cambridge, Massachusetts Unitarian minister, began a poem with lines that many of us in the Keweenaw might echo. And what is so rare as a day in June, then if ever come perfect days? Indeed, for many of us, the UP can seem like a climate paradise. We treasure lovely 75 to 85 degree days, especially as other areas swelter under extreme heat. The UP lacks hurricanes, mostly dodges serious tornadoes, and has access to some of the cleanest water, envied by those in the thirsty Southwest. But as we all know, the UP has its challenges. Warming in the Arctic causes fluctuations in the polar vortex, which can bring frigid cold and copious snow, 350 inches last year, or cause snow droughts, 150 inches the year before. We know too that we are not immune to smoke from Canadian or US wildfires, which knows no boundaries. And Enbridge's Line 5, containing oil from Canada's oil sands, threatens to poison the whole freshwater watershed of the Great Lakes. And we've been reminded all too recently ourselves here that human-caused climate change can trigger a month's or even a whole summer's worth of rain in only a few hours. Thus, while we might think we live in a climate refuge, our situation is more complex. Duluth is marketing itself as climate-proof Duluth, but the climate in-migration there has brought new residents who created exclusive, gated enclaves that recall the dystopian walled cities of Octavia Butler's science fiction classic, The Parable of the Sower. And we've heard many of our neighbors complaining that they don't want that our local communities be turned into another Traverse City, where those outsiders take over the lakefront property and force waitstaff, police, and teachers to move ever further into outlying areas in search of affordable housing, if they can find housing at all. I want to consider today what climate migration, or what James Biddle, the author, calls the Great Displacement, can mean for us as both residents of the UP and as Unitarian Universalists. The effects of climate change, including food insecurity, and unlivable areas beset by excess heat or rising salt water, have already led to political instability, riots, death, and of course, refugees. The wealthy always seem to be able to find a cooler, quieter, drier place to move to, buying new passports or waiving their golden visas. But many of us are descendants of immigrants who themselves fled famines and poverty, and as they are addressed by the words of Emma Lazarus's 1883 poem, engraved in the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me." Yet increasingly, both within the US and abroad, the poor, wretched refuse are truly treated like refuse. They're refused entry, or worse, sent off to foreign prisons if they have the temerity to come. On January 29th, Vice President J.D. Vance, speaking on Fox News, described Ordo Amoris, the order of love, an Augustinian medieval philosophy, which in his mind leaves little space for loving the homeless tempest-tossed. As he put it, you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country. And then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. Similarly, Christian nationalist Joe Rigney writes in his 2025 book, warning against the sin of empathy. 4 days after this book was published, Elon Musk asserted in a February 25th interview with Joe Rogan that the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. There's more complexity I can get into later. Unlike those who wish to lift the drawbridge to America up behind them, or to the UP, who wish to keep what they have as theirs alone, the symbol of our shared Unitarian Universalist covenant places love at the center. Hence, we call for a radical climate justice empathy, based on the principle of reversibility found in so many different religions and secular sources, including the Golden Rule. What if it were us seeking refuge? We would certainly want others to share with us. The principle of reversibility was interestingly imagined in the 2004 sci-fi film The Day After Tomorrow, when the cold, freshwater runoff from the melting glaciers of Greenland suddenly halts the warm Gulf Stream waters, precipitating a sudden deep freeze and rapid glaciation of the Northern Hemisphere, all in 2 hours, of course. A Washington, D.C. climate scientist rushes to rescue his son in New York City, and the movie ends with 2 of them and hundreds of thousands of other U.S. citizens fleeing the ice sheets as they try to cross the border to warmer lands in Mexico. It's easy to love our families the most, to work for our local churches and for our communities, and hence to follow the Ordo Amoris that Vance advocates. But just as many of our families once numbered among the immigrants looking for a haven, we are now faced with difficult social justice challenges of massive climate displacement, and we're called upon to share what we might consider paradise. Thus, we encourage you today and going forward to think about how our commitment to love as you use will move us to act in a time of climate crisis. Will we make the difficult choice of radical love and empathy? How can we fulfill the words of our covenant affirmed this morning to work together to be a religiously liberal voice seeking environmental and social justice in our larger community? How will we share and support the web of life and the inherent worth and dignity of all humans and other life around us when our local lifeboat gets really crowded? Okay, Horst. Make sure you unmute.
Thank you, Vicky. That was great. You wonder why does water bulk so large in the UP? Well, 45% of its surface is covered with wetlands, lakes, and rivers, which we can see wherever we go. And water goes where it goes. Property lines and political boundaries don't exist. As a result, if someone contaminates water on their property, it will carry the contaminants everywhere it goes. So what are the consequences of pollution? Well, as the UP was settled during the first 100 years, the development of mining, stripping of forests, growth of factories and towns led to water bodies becoming sewers and dumps. Then the mines closed, the forests gone, the fisheries, the Great Lakes nearly vanished. What was left? Widespread pollution of our waters, from mines to rail yards to paper mills and harbors. The environmental movement in the early 1970s led to federal laws to clean up our messes as well as rules for stopping pollution before it starts. Environmental awareness led to environmental action. Groups formed in the UP, as in the rest of the country, create not only awareness, but to demand action against polluters, challenging new mining activities, developing education programs in schools and the media, taking action when governments and businesses wouldn't listen. Then people said, let's buy lands and keep them for the public in perpetuity. Land trusts and conservancies sprang up in the UP, the Keweenaw Land Trust, UP Land Conservancy, the Yellow Dog Land Trust in Big Bay. In Keweenaw County, we have the Gratiot Lake Conservancy. The Michigan Nature Association has preserves, and recently the Nature Conservancy purchased over 30,000 acres, calling it the Keweenaw Heartlands. Wildlife has won in the UP with the passage of the Endangered Species Act. Wolves in particular have benefited as they were reintroduced, needing court-ordered protection to allow them to find their niche in our ecosystem. As Joan mentioned in the acknowledgement, Indigenous peoples have done much and are doing even more to help keep their lands following their own traditions. Tourism has grown exponentially in the UP in the last decade as people have discovered us. It's added an income stream which increases the economic vitality of the region, And unlike other industries, tourism has a much smaller environmental footprint spread across the peninsula. The UUA's climate revival last year, let's see, last year invited congregations to become directly involved with environmental activities on the local level. They called for involvement to be a reimagination, looking at our community through different lenses. What can be done to keep our towns and cities and our rural areas and our natural areas and wilderness more environmentally safe through varied activities and with organizations as well as regional, state, and even national ones. Our congregation has members active in different projects now and then. Joan Chatty with her Green Film series, Bill Later working to help preserve the Pilgrim River watershed, and Carol Ekstrom leading us to have a green sanctuary program. Their outstanding work embodies a reimagination of our environment, what we took for granted or didn't realize could be done, and all of us are beneficiaries. Aldo Leopold, the great conservationist, once wrote, "The new ecology is daily uncovering a web of interdependence so intricate to amaze even Darwin himself." So Leopold imagined in amazement his view of interdependence decades before that of our newly shared covenant of love. For that reason, I challenge everyone today to reimagine our environment within our congregation, our county, and our UP. Thank you.
Okay, where we normally have a wonderful song right now that Miriam would introduce called Pass It Along. I'm a rank amateur at this stuff, and I didn't get all the right information to Juxta in time. But luckily, that means we have time for a conversation, which we wanted to save time for anyway. So we will feature that song at a future service. We'll find a way to bring it to you because it's a lovely ballad that's Canadian in its origins. So, but we wanted to point out that the topics we're talking about today are huge, as the whole problem is. And we actually invite you, if you are so moved in future services, to contemplate something about what we can do, how we can respond in some way to the climate crisis we see around you. We know that the Green Sanctuary Committee has a role in this as well, and we are responding as a climate justice service, but there are many opportunities to think about all sorts of related issues, including housing issues, cleanliness of the water, and other kinds of things that we share. So we cannot do this all in our 10 minutes that Horst and I have talked, or 12 or more. But we recognize that we now have a few minutes of conversation to go here before we can close out our service, so we can start that conversation going. The UU asks us, how can our climate work be less isolating and more connected to other work that we do? Because it is very hard to do this kind of work and we need to work together. How can it be less anxious and more nurturing? Because we understand that it is scary to work on this. How can it be less limited and more visionary to think of new ways of responding? So we invite you to come forward or to raise your hands and come forward then and respond to what we've been talking about today. And if you have fullness of your heart that says you can't do it all right now, to come in the future services to do maybe something like that. I would love to do something about empathy and radical empathy, but let's wait. Okay, so anybody online who wants to begin, or anybody here? Okay, Jan Dahlquist. Jan.
Yeah, I just finished reading a book by Robert McFarland called Is a River Alive? And he points out that the human body is actually a river. Think of all the veins and capillaries and everything else and so on. Then look wider and take a look at the Sturgeon River, for example, and all the things that are flowing in and how it flows out. And the same thing, for example, with the Menominee River and all the rivers from the UP and some from Wisconsin that flow in and out to Green Bay. We are all alive and we are all moving in and out and around each other like a river. I love that idea. And that talks about being together and moving together and being concerned for each other in every way that we can. Thank you, Vicky and Horst, for your ideas. What I would like to see is for Houghton and Hancock to develop a compost program like Marquette has.
Good idea. Thank you, Jen. Okay. We got one fast and one slow. Why don't you come first, Jane, since you're faster, and just work your way up here. We'll get you. The line forms at the left.
This is probably long range, but I like how Jan said, let's all move together, or we are moving together. I would love to see public transit here. We've got a pretty good transit system in Houghton, I think, in Hancock. You can call it, it's on demand, plus they have their regular routes. They're kind of restricted, but at least it's there. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have something that runs 7 days a week? And maybe we just start with Houghton Hancock. I know there, especially in the winter, a lot of people don't want to be driving. Plus, as we know, cars are big contributors to carbon dioxide. It's tough to get people on public transit. I was down in the Twin Cities, which actually has a good public transit system, and it was me and then all the security that they've recently put on board. You know, maybe another person or two. But I think of my parents, they would tell me about, they grew up here, about how they would take the streetcars everywhere, even to Electric Park, which is, we used to be in a rural area across the bridge for dancing. They were electric streetcars that would run through Lake Linden. I live in Tamarack City, so it would connect Tamarack City to Lake Linden. You know, it might be that we have to wait for gas prices to get high again to do something like that. But I really feel like our little community could accomplish something like that.
This is Horst. I just wanted to add on to what Jane said, is that right now the state budget is being worked on, and Michigan Environmental Council is with other organizations is trying to get more funding for public transit. So if you can send or call your representatives and the state senator to let them know that you support public transit. Thank you.
Not
Connie and
looking for
Peter,
a
why don't
pat
you
on the
just
back,
speak up?
but my commitment to change. I have 36 solar panels on my building. I have 2 electric cars. When I check with a Chevy dealer, this particular model is not selling. People aren't buying electric cars. Because I go in the different, and they say, how many have you sold? We sold 1. So the commitment isn't really there for electric cars, but anyway, that's what I have done.
Fellow EV driver.
Connie and Peter, why don't you just speak up?
So I'm one of those crazies that knew the word environment when I was a child. And so I too have electric solar panels. I have a super insulated home. I have a geothermally heated home. I drive an EV now for 6 years. And everybody I know who has an EV loves their EV. Everybody I know who has an EV cannot understand why it is not everybody's first choice for at least a second car, because it doesn't do everything. Okay, it doesn't do the winter driving through the snowdrifts in a blizzard like a nice car does. But I wanted to share with you that there is so much misinformation, disinformation, false information, and politically and economically generated information that is telling you not the truth about electricity. Our society all over North America was electric at one point, with all our public transit with streetcars, and it was destroyed by the oil companies, who literally coerced, bribed, and changed the minds of politicians all across every little community and city in North America, except a few that still have electric transit. So I just would exhort you to find sources of information about EVs. Now, I realize they cost a little bit more, but they save a whole lot more. That's the thing, that us who own them don't understand why the original price of something is more important than the long-term value of it. And you see it in everything in our society. They'll sell you a concrete, beautiful bridge that needs to be rebuilt every 25 years instead of a steel one that has already lasted 100 years. And they'll tell you, well, it's cheaper. Well, of course it is cheaper, but it doesn't last as long. And so we pay, and we are paying in so many different ways for all these false informations. Well, please look into EVs. There's a thing called the EV Society. You can probably find it online. They have webinars, just oodles of webinars, all about the information. And I would not tell you to give up every car you own for an EV. I would say, if you have an option, look into it seriously. And when I ran for the Green Party in Winnipeg, I tried to tell people that green saves money, and it does. That's the thing that is not clearly, and it's been undermined by you-know-who at the very top and everybody else in between. They're undermining the truth of it. Green saves money. Geothermal heat saves money. Solar panels save money. Not today, over a little bit of time though. So please inform yourselves, find sources to get rid of or to balance the false information out there. Because what's your name? And I know we love our EVs, and they're cheap to run. I cannot tell you how little I pay to drive around. Anyway, please inform yourselves, because you need to know there is a huge misinformation thing out there that's destroying facts.
Okay,
I would
John?
just like to say that Vicky and Horst have done a super job
Okay. Karen
in
Tischler after Joan. Joan first.
in the presentation of this.
Hi, I want to invite anyone who is interested. I am trying to fill the shoes of Carol Ekstrom, which is really pretty impossible, but she was the leader of the Green Sanctuary Committee for 10 plus years, and she had a very robust program. In the transition here, thankfully, Vicky and Craig have taken on the biggest load of creating our native plant garden here, which is a project of the Green Sanctuary, as well as I mentioned, the Sustainability Film Series, but there's so much more that we could do, and people are coming up with great suggestions. So we will be having a meeting. I'm not really sure, maybe it'll be more like August, September after the summer, because everyone's so busy. But if you have ideas, please share them with me, and we'll make sure that we announce when the next meeting will be, so people are welcome to attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joan. Karen Tischler?
Actually, the Ekstroms and Connie would like to speak first, so I'd like them to have a chance.
Thank you.
You want to go?
Do you hear me? Am I,
Say,
oh. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay, okay. I would just like to say that, first of all, it's a great presentation. I really enjoy it. And I like the conversation. There are many good ideas, but one of the things I think that to get all this kind of thing really going is we live in a diverse community. We live in a red part of the state. And we need to have a message that is more inclusive, or more inclusive, and that will incorporate other people that may not have the same ideas about change as we do. And I'm not sure how to do that on a individual basis. I can see that, but on a much larger basis, I don't know. But that seems to be the key. I mean, to get these other ideas to fruition, we have to bring along other people that may have different focus on the environment, and not just convincing other people, but actually including them in our own proposals. I'm not sure how that could be done, but it seems to be crucial. Thank you.
can I say something too? I think an important thing that we need to look at is the zoning in both Hancock and Houghton. That right now, the solar panels are so important. We get plenty of sunshine here. There was a good presentation by Joshua Pierce long ago saying that we get as much sunshine as Germany. And so solar panels are effective, but we have zoning laws saying that solar panels cannot be placed on the front of the house. They cannot be seen from the street. And that needs to be changed. The public library is a perfect place to have solar panels as an educational experience for children coming in there. It would be a statement for the whole city and some of the city buildings and personal homes. So I think that would be something that we could work on, changing the zoning laws so that we could have solar panels in in a pronounced place.
Thank you, Carol. We're going to go to Bill Fink, and then we'll go to, you said Connie Julene was next? We're going to go back and forth, so Bill first.
Just wanted to be sure we're aware of facts. We think about all the snow that falls as being uniform. It's not uniform at all. Last winter, I measured 175 inches for the winter. Painsdale, over 300, sure. But we have to realize how variable things are in very small distances. The winter before, I measured 72 inches, and that's measuring with, qualified measurement. We talk about the Anishinaabe as if they have been here for thousands of years. They have not. The Anishinaabe were an eastern woodland people that were displaced by the Iroquois, who were displaced by the European settlers, and the Anishinaabe pushed the Sioux out of the lakes into the plains, and the Sioux discovered horses. And what a magnificent dynamic thing went on. One final thought I wish to leave with you is about Mother Superior. We think of the big lake as this violent, this strong, this overwhelming force. And indeed, when you get 30-foot waves coming against the shore, yes, it is. But the next time you are up on Brockway Mountain, if you can be lucky enough to be up there and you see a little lake freighter out there and you look at it and it's this big, and look all the way off to the left towards Duluth, all the way off to the right through the gap in the mountains and see Moore Lake going to the Sioux, and realize that on average, you can take that boat and sink it and stand it on end, and part of it will stick out of the water. The lake is only 680 feet deep on average. And when you apply that to that huge expanse of water, you realize Mother Superior is so fragile, so ephemeral, so easy for us to lose.
Let's do Connie Jeline next, and then we're going to go to John, and then we're going to go to Karen Tischler. It's Sherry? Sorry, Sherry. Go ahead, Sherry. Sorry, Connie, Sherry.
Okay. I just wanted to suggest that
You're on.
Oh, okay. I just want to suggest that all of our environmental problems and many of our social problems are caused by overpopulation. And this is something that people just don't want to touch. The carbon dioxide from a gasoline engine car is a concern, but the carbon footprint of one child is immense. I read that there are almost 7 billion people on the planet today, and that 2 billion could live on this planet if we all lived sustainably. And climate change is here in the UP now. I've been living here for 77 years. When I was growing up in Iron River in the 1960s, the temperature plummeted to 40 below often, several times a winter. And locally, Keweenaw Bay hasn't frozen for 3 years. I just want to close in saying that I don't have an answer. I'm not suggesting reducing the number of children. I'm suggesting not having any for a period of time, because I think overpopulation is such a concern.
Thank you, Connie. John? And Karen, did you want to come back on after John? Yes. Yes, okay.
Okay, I'll keep this short. Regarding cars, there are a couple of things you might want to know. Henry Ford, of course, built the gas engine when gas was a penny a gallon. However, he didn't think it was the best solution. His wife drove a Detroit Electric, and it still runs. Now, I used to work at the National Maritime Museum, which had steam-powered boats, ships, as well as sailboats. In the day when they were transitioning from sail to steam, there was a great distrust that the steam would power the boat. And the captains insisted that they have at least one sail on board. So this kind of reminds me of the distrust of electric cars, where it takes time for people to adjust to the idea that it really does work.
Thank you all for all your comments. Karen, you're going to have the last word today, and then Miriam's going to do our chalice closing.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Karen Tischler?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Um, Thanks for all of what you just presented, Vicky and Horst. I think it was pretty amazing and well done and gives a lot to think about. And I'm especially feeling appreciation for your connection of environmental and social justice. And this notion of like flowing like a river, and in a river, everything is there tumbling together. So I think as a community, it really behooves us to let our principles be at the forefront of any action that we take and make sure that we center people and non-people who don't have a voice, who don't have the ability to go out and buy electric cars, and who get lost in these conversations, because I think it's both going to be more fruitful and effective if that's the change that we really want to see. So I just really appreciate the ability to have this conversation in this setting, and I look forward to more. So thanks so much.
Thank you. And then Miriam will speak us out, and then we'll have our benediction song.